Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by robotic process automation pioneer SS&C Blue Prism. Digital transformation has the potential to reshape the way companies service their customers, engage their employees, and manage their operations. Whether you're looking to develop strategies, tactics, or best practices to positively impact the future of work, or you're curious to see how other companies have successfully navigated their digital transformation programs, then this podcast is for you. We're here to help you transform now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brad Hairston with SS&C Blue Prism. Welcome to the Transform Now podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have two of my colleagues as guests on the show, both of whom are in Blue Prism's customer success organization. The first is Niti Grover, based in Dubai, and the second is Susanna Berg, based in Stockholm. I will be talking with them about the topic of benefits realization in the intelligent automation space. Welcome, Niti and Susanna. Let me have you both start us off with some introductions. Niti, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Brad. Thanks for having us. I'm Niti Grover, and I'm a customer success director in the Middle East. Been with Blue Prism for over 4 years now, and I was a customer to Blue Prism before joining Blue Prism. And I've got an experience of close to 12 years in consulting. So that's me.
Excellent. And I think you're in the one place on earth that's actually hotter than Dallas right now. So
Yeah.
I congratulate you on that. And Susanna, as you give your intro, since you're in Sweden, we don't want to hear you talk about the weather. So just focus on your intro, if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us here, Brad. I must say that I feel really proud to be here because I'm a big fan of the podcast, and finally I'm here. Feeling
Thank you
honored.
very much.
And my background is very similar to Niti's. I've been here for around 4.5 years. Prior to that, I was a customer to Blue Prism, head of automation at Telia, telco in Sweden. And prior to that, I've been working in leading consulting organizations most of my life.
Excellent. I'm so glad to have this chance to talk with you both about this incredibly important topic of benefits realization, especially because I know you advise your customers in this area quite a bit. And as you both mentioned, you have hands-on experience actually doing intelligent automation, whether in consulting or in industry or as Blue Prism customers. So I think you have a very unique and deep perspective on this. So let's dive in. The first question I have for you both: when organizations start on their RPA journey, they are typically focused on returning hours to the business. That's what we hear over and over and over again. What are the other cost benefits that you would advise customers to consider? Niti, why don't you start us off on that?
You're right, Brad. When customers embark on the RPA journey, they focus generally on returning hours to the business. And although it is a crucial aspect and a good starting point, however, there are other cost-related benefits that organizations may consider. So benefits such as increased accuracy, fast process execution, scalability without linear cost increase, resource redeployment, and all these benefits do have direct or indirect impact on the cost. Let me try to explain it with an example. So I'm drawing from my experience of working with my customers. One of my customers in banking space has automated trade finance process. And we are all well aware that trade finance is a human intensive and an expensive process that attracts a lot of cost implications if not processed accurately or on time. So to give you some data associated with the process for the customer, after automating the trade finance process, the customer has reduced the turnaround time from 48 hours to just 3 hours, giving them a competitive edge. With a classification accuracy of 95%, which means there was an immense reduction in rework and effectively reducing the risk of non-compliance penalties, which means low or no fines. Isn't that powerful?
Yeah.
So this brings me back to the point that while the processes do save you a number of hours, there are critical benefits that we just spoke about, which have direct or indirect impact on cost, would have just been overlooked had the customer just focused on returning out to the business.
I totally agree with you, Niti, and that customer is a great example. I also advise, I think hours back to business is a really good start because most of our customers have started the journey from a cost saving perspective. That was how RPA started back in the days. But as a next step, you can take the easy one. If you look at the hours back to business, then you could look at the cost saved on these hours. You have less overtime, you have less sick leave, you maybe can reduce temporary staffing. So it's a lot of money, pure money involved in that. And I have customers that have insourced and automated instead of outsourcing, and that's really direct saving. Another example I have from a customer, it's actually a telco. And when people terminate their phone subscription, they called into the customer service and they automated this process. And you know what? They saved a lot of money. And you know why? Because in the contract, they have a 3-month termination period. And when it was terminated by the digital worker, they always took this 3 months into account. But when it was terminated by humans, they tended to terminate it direct, leaving a lot of money on the table that the customers were contractually bound. So that's also an example of real money savings.
Those are really great examples of cost savings opportunities. But let me expand it just to talk a little bit more about other benefits that can be measured with automation. Susanna, what are some examples that come to mind?
Yeah, obviously, one of the first examples has to do with processing time, lead times, faster processing. And the faster you can get the product out to market, the more money you can make on the product. The quicker you can onboard a new customer, the faster you get your money out from the customers. The quicker and easier you can onboard new employees, the faster you make the employees happier. And talking about the employees, we have noticed from many of our customers that it actually increases employee satisfaction having digital workers as colleagues because they actually do help you and you get to use your creativity. So you can measure employee experience with your NPS, for example. Most organizations already measure employee satisfaction. So just continuing doing that is a good thing. There are so many other things you could measure. I could talk about this for hours, but let me give you a couple of examples. Think
Okay.
about one thing that is extremely hot for most of the organizations today, ESG and how you measure ESG. And actually, what you're using your digital workforce for. If you measure your impact on, for example, the pollution, on the CO2 emission that you get from the digital worker, that really gives another measure that is very important to the organization and the top management. I have an example from a customer that they actually produces steel and they use digital workers together with with an algorithm. And every day they calculated how much raw material they would need. And then they used the digital workers to do a production schedule. This meant that they could order the right amount of steel. So apart from saving a lot of money and a lot of time, they also saved a lot of time on the roads for the steel, and they didn't get any waste. So that was really an impact on the CO2 emission.
I was expecting you to bring up ESG in some form or fashion. That's an area that I know globally we're seeing a lot more customers connecting to their automation capability because it can play such a powerful role in that space. So glad you brought that up.
Just to add on a couple of more benefits, I think scalability without linear cost increase is a very important benefit to measure. Because what happens is that RPA allows you to handle seasonality. For example, in a retail organization, order processing could be increased during holiday season, and RPA would effectively manage this spike without correspondingly increasing the costs, such as cost for hiring the new team, training the team, and the time it takes to get them onboarded. I think that's something that Susanna has already alluded to. So that is one of a very important benefit that I would measure. The second one that comes to my mind is knowledge retention. So RPA captures and retains institutional knowledge by automating processes that are performed by experienced employees. So the organizations do not risk losing the knowledge if the employees decide to leave at some stage.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense.
One of my customers, they are calculating hours back to their customers because the processes are faster and they get a quicker service. So they actually calculate and measure that and report on that.
Fantastic. And Niti, back to what you said a second ago, that also ties a little bit to what's happening with generative AI, because every company is doing something with Gen AI. They're looking to use it, integrate it into their business processes. And one thing that keeps coming up is how do we create that audit trail, that explainability, that governance around Gen AI? And more companies that are using automation are realizing that digital workers can play a significant role in creating that. And so there's another benefit. It ties a little bit to your institutional knowledge and auditability and those things. So let me ask, regardless of how benefits are being measured, what are customers that you work with doing with the benefits received?
That's a very interesting question. And it's actually something that I try to ask my customers all the time. And it's not something that is so explicitly measured and reported on as many other things. But the most common thing is obviously that this is an incremental process. You start automating in a business unit, and then you free up some hours and you save some money. And then the people start to take on additional tasks, and they start with not hiring any people, and then they start to do something else. They spend more time with customers. It's not easy to say because it's not a generic thing. It's different for different business units, for different processes. And it's happening for all the customers, and it's happened incrementally. I actually saw a survey, which is quite interesting. We asked customers, if 50% of the work that you do today would be automated, what would you do with the time? And 51% answered that they would use data analytics. They would work more with the processes to improve the
Mm.
processes further with help of more intelligence, more
Yeah.
intelligent automation. 45% answered they would collaborate more with colleagues, which is something that is very clearly happening.
Mhm.
And then they would spend more time with customers were 48%. They were the three top things that customers would do with the time, according to this survey. I have two examples on what you see on customer types, where they really see what you can do with the time, and they both from public sector. Think about healthcare sector,
Mhm.
doctors and nurses. So it's a lot about saving time for more appointments with patients. And that's what they talk about all the time in the healthcare sector. And I talked to a customer yesterday who is a police customer, and they had very similar thing. What do you do with the time you save? We spend it with doing police business instead of doing
Mm.
administration. So those type of organizations have very clear goals with what they do with their hours,
Yeah.
but it's not as easy for every organization.
Right.
And I found your survey quite interesting, Susanna, because that's definitely something that I've also observed with my customers, right? So the benefits that the customer, the hours that are returned to the customer, right? The organizations today are able to focus on innovation enablement, which means that they are able to redirect their human resources and financial savings towards new projects, innovations, which will lead to creation of new services, processes, products, etc., which makes me believe that the customers are able to derive numerous benefits and are also able to repurpose these benefits quite efficiently.
Mm. I actually think that what you do with the hours that you save, that's the biggest benefit from automation, because automation is not really a technology game. It's about people. It's about how people work, how we collaborate. So I think we all understand the power in this, but it's
Mhm.
more difficult to measure than other things.
Yeah. Agreed. One other thing I keep hearing, especially on the podcast for when we talk to customers or partners or others, is this idea of investing the hours saved from automation over into the growth side of the business. So supporting revenue increases, possibly avoiding having to hire a lot of additional workers to support your growth. That seems to be a theme these days. Would you agree with that?
I've seen tendencies in some of
Yeah,
the more progressive customers to start to have those type of discussions. How can we grow now when we have the digital workforce?
exactly. So, as organizations mature in their automation capability, their focus on metrics and KPIs often evolves as well. What are some of the trends you see across our customer base? Nidhi, why don't you start us off on that one?
So you're quite right, Brad. So as the organizations grow and mature in their implementation of RPA, the focus on metrics and KPIs undergo transformation. So, for example, what I have seen with the organizations is that there's a shift towards process complexity and end-to-end automation. So what happens is that when you are starting off on an RPA journey, right, organizations tend to focus on automating simple rule-based tasks, which is a good place to start as it reads and quickly demonstrates the benefits. But as they mature, there's a shift towards automating complex processes and with a lot of focus on end-to-end process automation. So what this approach does is that it leads to substantial improvement in their operational efficiency, cost saving, and other business value-based metrics such as revenue growth, customer satisfaction, etc. That's like one of the major shifts that I've seen. The other one, which I've observed, and this is quite recent, and this is something that we've been discussing throughout this podcast so far, is that as the organizations mature, they've started to focus more and more on artificial intelligence integration to achieve more intelligent and adaptive automation. So the combination of RPA and artificial intelligence allows these organizations to handle unstructured data, make informed decisions based on the data, and adapt to dynamic scenarios.
So if I can add a bit to that about how I see how the KPIs are evolving, how our organization is working with this. From, as we have said today, you start with hours back to business, then you start to look at other cost savings, then you start to look at process improvement metrics and different kind of things. But what I see from the programs nowadays, from the customers that are doing a more transformational top-down automation program, I've seen a couple of my customers starting to use one of my metrics, which is actually my favorite metrics. And it's the percentage of work in an organization that is done by the digital workforce. So it's hours returned divided by people working in an organization. What happens is that the top management put a target on the different business units. So you are now at 1% automated, 1% automation degree. Next year, I want you to be at 2%. And this is a trend that I've seen with several customers, that they get top-down targets on the business unit versus just having the automation team having the targets.
So the
The automa-
magnitude of the benefits is something that is laid emphasis on, isn't it, Susanna?
Definitely, it's much more important for the whole organization, and they measure it in a holistic way. And obviously, they don't put the same target on different types of organization. So a trend is that they start to measure more organization-wise than just process-wise. And they understand this about digital workers working together with humans. That's really interesting.
I love that focus on measuring the value of automation at the organizational level versus the process level. I think that's really great.
It's so different for different customers because it really depends on their own strategy. I have a couple of customers where driving down cost is the only focus. And then they are really focused on finding and automating the big cost drivers. And other customers that are really focused on growth, then, as you said before, then they start to look at where are the growth opportunities? So how can I have KPIs on my automation that is connected to my growth strategy? So the trend is really that from RPA being something in a corner saving hours, it's becoming much more transformational. And
Yeah.
the KPIs also.
Well, as Niti alluded to earlier, we are definitely in the era of intelligent automation where digital workers are being combined with powerful AI enabled skills. And Gen AI, of course, is the most recent addition to that landscape. What impact do you think AI is having on benefits realization?
I think that's a brilliant question because one, this subject interests me a lot. And two, because it's slightly difficult to answer this question in a few words because there's so much that you can do with integrating artificial intelligence, machine learning, neural networks with RPA, right? To give you a few benefits or impact of the plethora of benefits that one can achieve. The first impact that I've observed is the ability to make informed decisions. So what happens is that AI-powered RPA is capable of processing vast volumes of data, leading to improved decision making, empowering organizations to make objective or data driven choices as opposed to subjective decision making, which usually is prone to human bias. The second one that I can think of is adaptive learning. So when you infuse AI into RPA, what it does is it empowers automation systems to learn from historical data, identify patterns and anomalies and trends, which enables the automations to dynamically adapt to the changing situations and manage risks. So such automation processes can continually optimize themselves over time, fostering continuous improvement. And what else it does is that it contributes to overall operational stability and resilience, which is a major benefit that you get out of it. The third one that I can think of is enhanced customer experience. So AI powered RPA can provide more personalized and context aware interactions with customers. So, by analyzing the customer data and the behavior, the systems can make recommendations that align with individual preferences or context.
Those are great examples of how AI is enhancing benefits. Thank you for that, Niti. Susanna, your thoughts on this topic?
I can only reinforce what I believe, that it's not going to change the KPIs or the things we measure a lot, but it's going to be so much bigger for our organization, and it's going to get much more focus from top management, and it's going to have a much more visible impact on the actual revenue, on the actual profits of organizations, on their future. So I think the same KPIs that we have talked about will be just more and more important, and they will show higher values.
And Susanna, you kind of alluded to this earlier in our conversation, but measuring how quickly we can execute processes or measuring how much it costs the organization to perform them before and after automation, clearly the addition of intelligent skills such as IDP or NLP, things like that, that will give the organization the ability to expand the KPIs they use to measure benefits in this area. Is that a fair assessment?
You are
Yeah.
definitely right, Brad. That's definitely fair.
Yeah. And the fact that it's only going to open a new era of opportunities for automation, right? So the combination of both will be transformational, is what I can say.
Yep. So you hear a lot of companies these days saying that they are looking to be more resilient, more flexible, more agile, especially in light of the pandemic and the lessons learned during that time frame. How have you both seen customers benefit from the operational agility that they're getting from implementing intelligent automation?
It's quite obvious that what we see is that they are able to change very fast, to scale processes up and down. And as you said, the pandemic was probably the best example, because suddenly banks needed to process millions of requests for postponing mortgage payments, for examples. And they could do this in a couple of weeks because most of them already had digital workers. And that's happening in maybe in a smaller scale, but that's happening all the time within our customers. They have a new product that suddenly have a huge demand. Maybe they did a marketing campaign, and instead of just moving people to that process, more people answering the phone, more people filling out different sheets to sell things, they just increase the number of digital workers. So it's really true that we've seen examples where they become more agile.
Yeah, I totally agree with Susanna. And scaling up and down is definitely an important piece. What I have seen, and I can possibly share one of my examples from the pandemic times, and it is about data agility. And we know that data agility does contribute to organizations' overall agility, right? By enabling quicker, faster, and efficient responses. I'll give you an example. So we were in COVID-19 pandemic, and I had a customer in petroleum industry who had set up a digital worker to analyze the COVID related statistics such as death counts, recovery rates, treatments, etc. So the outcome of that analysis enabled this organization to make choices concerning oil's oversupply, gradual recovery, demand shock, etc. This kind of shows you that intelligent automation power of both operational and data agility in dynamic situations like that.
In our new big trends that are happening. The energy prices, for example, I can only imagine that it's a lot of more people wanting to change the subscription type they have,
Yeah.
going to fixed. And that's a typical process where you can see a big fluctuation in demand impacted by external forces, you can see. And the same goes for all the retailers. When the prices go up, they need to sell different things and hence affecting the processes and up and down.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about some of the challenges that customers face in their quest for full benefits realization. Susanna, why don't you start us off on that?
Yes, this is my favorite topic. No, challenges, or rather, how to overcome challenges. Actually, I think the biggest challenges our customer face, the people I work with are mainly the automation team. And the biggest challenge is they haven't decided to go for the full benefits realization. No one is asking them. They haven't been given the task to do everything they could do with the help of intelligent automation. That is what I think is the biggest inhibitor for reaching the full benefits realization.
I absolutely agree with you, Susanna. That has been one of my concerns too.
So it sounds like you both sometimes don't see automation teams getting the strong top down sponsorship from the company leaders to encourage the automation teams to really go for it.
I mean, it's everything that has to do with organization, people, transformation, change management that takes time. And you see the siloed organization, that's another hinder for going to the full potential. Change is very difficult. Let's say you've been working in IT for 30 years, like I have, and then you know that IT architecture should be like this and the integrations and the system. And suddenly comes something new like intelligent automation. It takes really long time for people to embrace it. So they are like, no, this is strange. I don't want to do this. Please stop. That's another inhibitor.
And maybe unrealistic expectations also, Susanna, no? Because organizations sometimes have overly optimistic expectations about the speed and the magnitude of benefit realization, which, if not met, leads to disappointment, right? So, hence, I think that the right expectations should be set properly and then it should be course corrected throughout the automation journey.
I can totally agree with that one. And also, let's say now Gen AI come. And now everyone says, oh, can we do a lot of things and
Yeah.
can we get a lot of benefits? So it's going to be the same. So right expectations. I
Yeah.
totally agree, Niti.
I know that both of you would agree that intelligent automation is by design business led. So that connection with the business is really, really important. It seems to me that a lot of companies begin their automation journey with that linkage in a good place to the business operations teams. But over time, it may diminish with the departure of a business sponsor, for example. How often do you see this happen?
I think it's very common. And I think it's both pros and cons because I have an example of several customers. They started in the business in 1 unit, in 2 units. And when they decide to do it full blown automation in the organization, they move the capability to IT because IT is the only organization that has the responsibility to work with everyone in the organization. So in the beginning, that's normally really good. They reach out to many more places and they get more. But after some time, they start to realize that they usually lose the connection with the business when they get too far away. So it's very difficult to say what is the right thing to do, probably to shift. Collaboration is the only way forward, but who should lead and drive? It needs
Yeah.
collaboration to succeed.
Well, speaking of connectivity to the business, let me ask you our final question for the conversation here today as we wrap up. I'd like both of you to talk about some of the best ways you have seen companies communicate and promote the automation benefits they're realizing across the organization and with the leadership. That's such an important step that I know many companies struggle to do effectively. So I'd love to hear what are some best practices that both of you have seen in the customers that you work with.
I agree with you, Brad. So, effectively communicating benefits is very important. A, because it garners support from within the organization. B, you are able to align the stakeholders, and C, you are able to drive the success. there could be multiple ways of doing it. And each organization is unique and they have their own culture and they can do whatever approach works best for them. But some of the ways that we've seen work is number one, crafting a clear and concise message about automation initiative, the goal and the benefits received, right? So you want to be using a language that resonates both with the technical and non-technical stakeholders. So hence, clear and compelling message is something that is of importance. The second one for me would be having executive sponsorship, because having a visible executive sponsor lends credibility to the initiative. Executives can communicate the importance of automation benefit and share the benefits that were expected versus received down the organization hierarchy. And the third one, which I think is extremely important, is sharing success stories. So I can give you an example of a customer of mine who has literally unlocked opportunities beyond the initial region of implementation by just showcasing the successes in their own region. So this has led to increased interest and engagement from other regions and countries from within the same customers network.
I don't have so much to add to that, but just some very practical examples. For example, you can have a reporting tool that all the execs could have in their phone. They could look at their digital workers. How much have they done today? How much have they saved me today? Which benefits have they given me? And how much have they transacted? How much have they worked? So if all the business unit leaders with digital workers have that kind of information at their fingertips, they look at it and it's really important for them.
I agree that presenting what you've achieved
Yep.
is very important.
My favorite example came from a podcast discussion recently with one of our customers, a big healthcare organization in the US. And every time they roll out a new process automation, they do a bot birth announcement, like a new baby being born. And they send it out to a broad subsection of the company and they promote, hey, we just launched a new bot, or essentially a new automation. Here's the benefit we're getting from it. And the business group that brought the idea, they play a role in actually naming the bot, which is also kind of a cool idea. But anyway, I thought that was a great way to generate some really good visibility and do it in a positive way. I hope more of our customers will follow suit and do some things like that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brad. And it's quite unique and a very creative way of communicating the impact, right? So maybe something that I want to share with my customers too.
Yeah.
But thanks a lot for sharing it.
Well, Niti and Susanna, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. You've given our listeners a lot of great things to consider in this incredibly important area of benefits realization. Done correctly, this can have such a positive impact on efforts to scale automation and get even more value from it. So thank you again, and I wish you both the very best.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you so much for having us here, Brad.
Thanks for tuning in to Transform Now. For more insightful discussions on digital transformation and more, check out our podcast channel where you'll find all of our previous episodes. And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And if you like what you've heard, please leave us a review. For more information about digital transformation and the future of work, check out blueprism.com to learn how SS&C Blue Prism's digital workforce is enabling enterprise transformation now.